In the heart of Lagos, Nigeria, a city alive with honking danfos, fast-talking traders, and vibrant rhythms, the morning rush had a pattern of its own. Streets overflowed with people chasing time, weaving between fruit stalls, call-and-response preachers, and the clamor of busy lives. Among this moving sea, Natasha, a tall, 1m90, slender, graceful 24-year-old woman with fair ivory skin, bright green eyes, and long, straight, light brown hair that flowed gently down her back, walked with elegance and quiet determination. Every day, dressed with taste and class, she strode confidently in her pastel dresses and beige heels, her beige leather handbag tucked neatly under her arm. Her soft features and radiant, clear complexion gave her an almost ethereal presence, even amid the noise and dust of the city. But what truly set Natasha apart wasn't her beauty, it was her eyes. They held a kind of softness, a light of compassion that rarely flickered, no matter how chaotic the world around her became. Every morning, as she passed through Ikeja's busy intersection near the old church wall, she saw him. There, always in the same spot, sat Simon, a 28-year-old man with a chiseled, square-jawed, oval face, deep cafe-colored skin, sharp hazel-brown eyes that glowed quietly beneath long lashes, and short, slightly wavy black hair cropped tightly to his scalp. He was tall, 1m90, lean but strong, with the build of an athlete beneath the layers of dust and neglect. He wore a faded brown coat, torn at the sleeves, and mismatched clothing that clung to his frame with wear. His trousers were patched in places, and his shoes had long given up. He was barefoot, his feet hardened by the cement and sun. Yet even in that state, Simon's posture was noble. He never slouched or reached out to beg. He simply sat still, observing, calm, as if he belonged to another world, one hidden behind his silence. To most, he was invisible. A shadow. A piece of the urban landscape. But not to Natasha. The first day she saw him, she hesitated. She felt that quiet pull, something unspoken, human, tender. She reached into her handbag and handed him a 500 naira note. Simon, with his athletic build, cafe-brown skin, glowing hazel eyes, and solemn presence, simply nodded. He didn't speak. He didn't even raise his hand to take the money. He just tilted his head slightly, allowing her to place it in the folded paper cup beside him. The next day, she did it again. And again. It became a ritual. They never spoke. He never asked. She never questioned. It was as if words would have ruined the purity of that quiet exchange. Natasha, in her pastel outfits and polished shoes, carrying herself like a professional model lost in the real world, became his constant. And Simon, in his worn-out coat and barefoot dignity, became hers. Passers-by took notice. "That girl's wasting her money," someone murmured. "He's probably a scammer," said another. But Natasha never cared. Something about Simon's bright eyes, his regal calmness, and the way he carried his 1m90 frame with silent strength, told her there was more to him. Something unspoken. And maybe that was why she kept coming back. To others, it was a woman giving money to a homeless man. But to her, it was peace. It was meaning. And to him, though he never said a word, it was the first crack in a wall he had long ago built around his heart. Days turned into weeks. Weeks melted into months. And like the morning sun rising over the Lagos skyline, Natasha became a fixture of Simon's world. Every morning, she walked that same chaotic path, where fruit vendors yelled prices, Okada riders weaved dangerously between buses, and people moved like flowing rivers, fast, determined, indifferent. But not Natasha, not to him. Each day, she came in a different outfit, sometimes a pastel dress, other times a more corporate look, but always with the same grace. On this particular stretch of time, she often wore a crisp white blouse tucked into a modest blue skirt, paired with low beige heels. Her makeup was minimal, her handbag always matching her look, and her hair flowed effortlessly as the Lagos breeze caught it. She never rushed when she passed Simon. He sat in the same place, by the same cracked wall, wearing the same faded brown coat with holes at the sleeves, torn trousers, and dusty, barefoot feet. His clothes carried the scent of dust and rain, and yet, his posture was always upright, never hunched, never defeated. Every day, she brought something. Sometimes it was a 500 naira note gently tucked into the paper cup beside him. Other times, it was a small white food container, neatly packed jollof rice with fried plantains and chicken wings. Once, it was a bottle of cold water. Another time, a fresh bread roll from the corner bakery. And every time, Simon received it with the same quiet gesture, a slow, respectful bow of the head. He never stretched out a hand. He never begged, smiled, or spoke. It became routine. A strange, sacred ritual between two strangers who never exchanged a single word. Yet, their silence spoke volumes. People around began to whisper. Some called her a fool. Others thought it was charity. But Natasha never saw it that way. To her, it was never about pity. It was about presence. It was about noticing someone the world chose to forget. She didn't know his story. She didn't need to. But every time she looked at Simon, she felt a strange connection. A question. A mystery. What pain lay behind that silence? Why did a man so physically strong and dignified, with eyes that burned with intelligence, remain silent, barefoot, and still? She never asked. He never told. But the space between them became sacred, a space where judgment didn't exist, where kindness didn't need reward, and where words were unnecessary. As the seasons changed, and the rains came and went, their ritual remained untouched. Morning after morning, her heels echoed in rhythm with her intention, and his eyes followed her quietly, as if waiting for something, not out of need, but out of curiosity or hope. In a city that never slowed down, Natasha and Simon had carved a small moment that belonged only to them, a heartbeat of humanity in a world too loud to listen. The Lagos sky was grey that morning. Thick, heavy clouds hung low over the city like a warning. The normal noise of the morning was softer, as if even the city knew something different was coming. Rain, steady and relentless, washed over the cracked sidewalks and rusted rooftops. It drummed against metal umbrellas and created little rivers along the roadside gutters. And still, as she always did, Natasha walked her usual path. But today, her hair was slightly damp, clinging gently to the sides of her face. She wore a long, elegant black raincoat that reached her knees, tied at the waist. Her beige heels were replaced with black waterproof flats, and a large black umbrella shielded her from the worst of the downpour. Even under the dull sky, she walked with that same sense of quiet purpose. She turned the corner. The rain was stronger there, driven sideways by the wind. But he was still there. Simon sat as he always did. His faded brown coat, now drenched and clinging to his body, looked more worn than ever. Water pooled around his bare feet, but he didn't move. His posture was upright, unmoving, as though the rain had no power over him. And that's when something shifted. For the first time since their ritual began, Natasha paused longer than usual. She looked down at him, really looked. The way the water ran down his face, the way his hazel eyes stared blankly forward, how his body remained dignified despite the cold and wet, something in her heart twisted. Without thinking, she closed her umbrella. She stepped closer, and with a gentle motion, held it above Simon's head instead of her own. He didn't react at first. But slowly, he lifted his gaze. It was the first time Simon, with his cafe skin, soaked black hair, and glowing hazel eyes, had ever looked directly at her. And in that instant, the world faded. The city disappeared. The rain became background music. Two pairs of eyes met, his, tired but curious, glowing with questions, hers, soft, full of emotion, unafraid. Then he spoke. His voice was deep but quiet, worn down by silence and the years that came before. "You don't have to do this," he said. There was no bitterness. No pride. Just a quiet surprise, as though he had finally allowed himself to believe she was real. And Natasha replied gently, "I know, but I want to." And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A secret made of kindness. A truth built from months of silence. Neither of them smiled. Neither of them cried. But something broke. And something new began. The rain continued to fall. But neither of them noticed anymore. The next day, Simon was gone. Natasha searched for weeks. No one had seen him. Her mornings felt empty. She wondered if he was even real. It was just another Lagos morning. Same street, same noise, same rushing crowd. But something was missing. Simon had disappeared. He had sat in the same corner for months. Rain or sun, he was always there, a silent witness to the chaos of the city. But now, his corner was empty, just a cracked wall, a puddle where his feet once rested, and silence where his presence once gave quiet strength. Natasha stood still, staring at the space that used to belong to him. Her eyes scanned the street, hoping for a sign, a shadow, a trace, a whisper. She wore a long, elegant beige dress that fluttered slightly in the morning breeze. It hugged her form modestly, with subtle embroidery at the collar. Her beige flats tapped lightly on the concrete as she slowly turned her head left, then right, searching. But there was nothing. No trace of the man with glowing hazel eyes and unspoken stories. No paper cup. No coat. No footprints. She returned the next day. Then the day after that. A week passed. Then 2. Then 3. Every morning, Natasha, with her green eyes dimmed by confusion and sadness, walked down the same road with a small white paper bag in hand. Inside it, she placed the same thing each time: rice and beans, plantains, and a bottle of water. But the food always returned home uneaten. She asked around. The fruit vendor near the corner shrugged. The security guard across the street said he'd never noticed him. The woman selling akara simply said, maybe he found a better place. But Natasha knew it wasn't that simple. You don't just disappear like that, not someone like Simon. She tried to convince herself he had found help, maybe a shelter. Maybe a long-lost relative had taken him in. Maybe it was a good thing. But her heart didn't believe it. Something about his absence felt unfinished, unresolved. Like a book with the final chapter ripped out. And every time she stood on that street corner, alone, holding that food, her heart ached a little more. What if he had only existed in her imagination? What if her kindness had been misplaced? What if she had created a bond that was never real? But the memory of their last moment under the umbrella, the way Simon, with his soaked black hair and deep hazel gaze, had finally spoken, that was real. It had weight. It had meaning. And that was why she couldn't let it go. The city moved on. Life kept rushing around her, cars honked, people bargained, buses roared past. But Natasha stood still, waiting. Not for answers. Not even for closure. Just for a presence that had changed her in ways she could not explain. A month later, at a grand charity gala she was invited to by her company, Natasha couldn't believe her eyes. On stage stood Simon, shaved, clean, glowing, in a white designer suit. The venue sparkled under chandeliers made of crystal. Polished marble floors reflected soft golden lights, and a string quartet played softly in the background. Waiters in tuxedos moved gracefully between tables, serving champagne and delicacies. Laughter, clinking glasses, and whispers of luxury filled the air. Natasha entered the ballroom with quiet grace. She wore a fitted black suit tailored to perfection, paired with nude heels and minimal, elegant gold jewelry. Her makeup was light and classic, just enough to highlight her features without overpowering them. She felt slightly out of place in the sea of extravagance, but she smiled politely as she greeted colleagues and accepted compliments on her look. Her company had sponsored a table at the annual Lagos Humanity Gala, an event known for raising millions for education and healthcare across Nigeria. She sipped from a glass of sparkling water and glanced toward the stage as the lights dimmed and a host in a tuxedo took the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, we honor not only the generous donors in this room, but one man whose hidden kindness and extraordinary vision will redefine the meaning of philanthropy in Nigeria. Polite applause echoed through the room. And now, I present to you, our surprise keynote speaker, Mr. Simon Okchukwu. The name hit her like a storm. Simon walked onto the stage under golden spotlights. But he was unrecognizable, and yet completely the same. He wore a custom white designer suit, tailored to his tall, athletic frame with elegance and precision. A soft, high-collar silk shirt shimmered under the lights. On his wrist glistened a gold watch, understated but refined. His skin, the same glowing cafe brown hue, looked polished and healthy. His hair was freshly trimmed, shaped perfectly to his face. His hazel eyes, those same eyes that had once met hers under a broken umbrella, now sparkled with confidence. And he was smiling. A warm, calm, assured smile that lit up the entire room. Natasha froze. Her heart stopped. She couldn't move, couldn't blink. Everything around her blurred. Only Simon, the man she thought had vanished, remained in focus. He spoke into the microphone with a calm, powerful voice. Many of you know me as a quiet investor, someone who prefers to work behind the scenes. But for the past year, I lived among the people, not as Simon the businessman, but as Simon the wanderer. And during that time, I learned one truth: kindness is not loud. It's not for cameras. It's silent, and it saves. The room went completely silent. He paused. There was a woman, she gave without asking. Every day, she reminded me of the value of being seen, of being human. She expected nothing, but her compassion brought me back. Natasha, still frozen in her chair, blinked as tears filled her eyes. He was speaking of her, no doubt. And in that moment, she didn't care that she was in a ballroom or surrounded by luxury. She wasn't dressed for recognition. She wasn't prepared to be seen. But Simon, once a barefoot man with a torn coat, now a glowing figure in white, had seen her all along. Their eyes met again across the room. And for the first time since the day he disappeared, she smiled. He spoke. I was testing humanity. Natasha, you gave without asking. You gave from the heart. I'm not a homeless man. I'm Simon Obi, billionaire and founder of Hope Trust Foundation. And you reminded me of real wealth. The ballroom stood in stunned silence. The air itself felt still, like the world had paused to witness the moment. Simon stood on the stage, holding the microphone with both hands, looking down directly at her. His white designer suit shimmered slightly under the golden lights, perfectly tailored to his broad, athletic frame. His silky high-collar shirt glowed faintly, and the gold watch on his wrist gleamed. But it wasn't the outfit that caught everyone's attention. It was his presence, calm and powerful, filled with vulnerability. His voice was low but rich, strong but soft, as if every word carried a deeper meaning. I lived on the streets by choice, he continued. I wanted to see if compassion still existed, or if people only help when it's convenient or when cameras are watching. He turned his glowing hazel eyes toward the crowd, then back to Natasha, who sat motionless at her table. She still wore her tailored black suit, delicate gold earrings, and light makeup. But now, her breath was caught in her throat, her chest rising and falling slowly as tears welled in her green eyes. You didn't know my name. You never asked for mine. You never asked me to speak. And still, you gave. Every morning. Without fail. Without condition. You reminded me what humanity should look like. A murmur passed through the crowd, a mix of admiration and awe. Some guests teared up. Others looked at Natasha with new eyes, not as just another beautiful woman in a gala dress, but as someone who had touched the soul of a man now revealed to be one of Nigeria's richest philanthropists. Simon stepped slightly forward, eyes still locked on hers. Natasha, he said, his voice softening, I built Hope Trust Foundation because I believed wealth should heal the world. But somewhere along the way, I forgot how wealth truly begins, not with money, but with heart. The room stood still again. And then, the applause began. It started slow, one person clapping, then another, and another, until the ballroom erupted in a standing ovation. People rose to their feet, wiping tears, clapping not just for Simon's story, but for the power of invisible kindness, for the quiet force of Natasha's heart. Natasha, with her green eyes glistening, her mouth slightly open in disbelief, slowly stood as well, blinking back the tears that now spilled freely down her cheeks. Simon, radiant under the golden light, smiled warmly at her. It was a smile of truth, of gratitude, of recognition. And in that sacred moment, filled with applause, warm lighting, emotion, and grace, two souls saw each other not as strangers from different worlds, but as equals in a moment that would forever change them both. In a world full of noise, we often overlook the silent cries of those around us. But kindness, true kindness, is not about who is watching. It's about who you choose to be when no one is. Natasha didn't know she was being watched. She didn't know that her simple act of giving again and again would change someone's life. She gave from the heart. No cameras, no expectations, just love. Simon had all the wealth in the world, yet it was Natasha's compassion that reminded him what true riches look like. This story is a reminder to all of us: you never know who's watching. You never know what impact a small act of kindness can have. So today, ask yourself, who have you lifted? Who have you seen? Not all heroes wear suits. Not all angels have wings. Sometimes, they carry an umbrella in the rain. White right pointing backhand index. If this story moved you, share it, live it, and be it. Kindness costs nothing, but it's worth everything. Thank you for watching.